you guys are having a great time. So my name is Gabriela. I'm the head of Grooming and CFX at Framestore, and SideFX kindly invited me to talk today a little bit about CG animals and how we use Houdini to make them. I'm gonna start showing up a bit of a reel of our recent animals that we've been doing at Framestore.
Just watch how I do. Judging by your face, I passed the smell test. You really spit. Hell yeah. I'm trying to see if I got it. I'm like, hell yeah. Hell yeah. Found $50 in your pocket? Alright, hell yeah. Hell yeah. If you know who I be, say it. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Found 100 in your pocket? Alright, hell yeah. Oh, you really about the profit? Oh, hell yeah. Hell yeah. Found 1,000 in your pocket? Oh, hell yeah. Found $1 million in your pocket? Now I don't believe it. That don't sound right.
Thank you. So first of all, I'm going to explain a little bit about Framestore. So Framestore is split into multiple divisions, and the one that works called Integrated Advertising, shortcut is AI. And we work on a different range of projects, including advertising, episodic, immersive, but we also do sometimes some films and some different kind of projects as well. So advertising is where this actual division started many years ago, and was the core of it until a few years we started expanding to the other types of projects. And we are the first ones inside Framestore to move our pipeline to Houdini in terms of lighting, grooming, CFX, and FX. So we did that around 6 years ago, and we still use Houdini for our core main pipeline. So after animation, from that onwards is all Houdini. Those are a few of the recent commercials that we deliver. And for example, Mars Shiba won a BAFTA, and we got a Tree Mobile that also won an award recently. So yeah, lots of exciting commercials. Episodic, so around 50% of our current workload at the moment is episodic. We are heavily investing on that. And these are some of like the recent shows we worked on, like Netflix 1899, Man vs. Bee, Cowboy Bebop, Dexter, Marvel WandaVision, National Geographic Into the Womb. So we do like from very like smaller sequence inside an episodic to the whole full show. For example, Man vs. Bee had a other thing like 200 CG shots inside the womb, another 800, 100 at around that 100, between 100 and 200 shots as well. So yeah, a lot of CG on that. And the last type of project we usually do is called immersive. Immersive is, imagine when you go to a theme park and you got these attractions with like some screens on a roller coaster or some VRs. So all this kind of location-based entertainment, we also work on this. We recently delivered the Disneyland Paris Avenger Campus. We also did the Jurassic Adventure World at Universal Studios in the US and Jumanji, The Next Adventure. We have another talk specifically about immersive happening on Friday as well. So if you're interested, you can check that out. So Framestore IEA has 4 offices around the world. We got New York, Los Angeles, London, and Chicago. So those are dedicated to IEA. London, we have both film and IEA, but the other 3 are 100% IEA. And we work with then seamless, so a lot of times on the same projects. So it's like a big office that everyone works together, like without barriers. So our pipeline is very well done to support this kind of arrangement. and a little bit about me before I start talking CG and technical stuff. So I am an animal lover, and I was born on a very small farm in the countryside of Brazil, and I grew up surrounded by animals. So I used to do like horse riding, feed the birds, and do all this stuff. I travel through the world in many places, and I always go like to zoos, to sanctuaries, to meet animals up close. I love them. I'm fascinated by nature. I think nature is my greatest inspiration. If you want to do something challenging, try to mimic nature, because that's one of the most complex things in the world. And when I found out that I wanted to do CG, and I wanted like to study computer graphics and all of that, I kind of like merged those both passions together. And for the past like 6 years, I'm specializing in doing CG animals. So I spend most of my time just recreating them. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about feathers, fur, and flesh. Well, starting with feathers, if you ever try to do anything feathers related, you will know when I say it's one of the biggest challenges in CG. It's very tricky to do feathers for many reasons. One of them is because you need to know a lot about grooming first, so you need to be like kind of an expert in grooming. But feathers is very technically complex as well. So you need to know a lot about like the mathematical sides and technical parts to make a feather behave properly. It's one of the things I found most difficult in CG. So around 6 years ago, we started building at Framestore Barbarella, which is our in-house feather system, fully based in Houdini. The first project we did was these hummingbirds. I think there was a few talks about him, but since then we've been using this on a lot of projects. Barbarella is currently on version 3, so it had a lot of improvements since our first run on this. And it's very stable, and we've been using it on episodic, commercials, a full range of projects. So first step, how do we create feathers? Before doing anything in CG, I said the first thing is to get a reference. So I have at home a huge bag of feathers. Every time I go to a park and I see one on the ground, I grab them, put on that bag and take home. I'm this kind of freak. Then these are like some of them that I like, and you can see how different they can get and how many things are involved into a feather. So I can think of something simple, but once you look up close, you see that is actually not. So that's why I say it's always good to have like the real thing in your hands if you can, instead of only you looking at pictures. Once you hold it, then you see like all the curvatures on all sides. It's way more in deep than just like look at something flat. So our Barbarella, our feather system, it has a designer node that we can design feathers. And the way we do this, first we can get like a picture. We can draw the outlines on that picture in Houdini. We can draw the shaft. And based on this, it's going to create the feather silhouette. So first of all, it's going to normalize it. So in this case, like the feather is bended, and we draw it bended. But then the auto like centralizes it and straight up. And then once you place it on the bird, then it's going to be bent again. But you need to auto normalize first. And we generate 3 types of geometry with feathers. First one is a low resolution proxy that you can use for simulation to pass on to rigging. And it doesn't weigh too much. We have like a high res one that's more similar to this middle one here, that if you want to do something more complex, more elaborated. And then we have the final one, which is 100% made of like barbs and strands of hairs. And when you start designing this feather, there are a few components that you can edit, and I'm gonna very overview highlight some of them. The first one I'd like to set up is the barb angle. So it's just if it's pointing upwards, downwards, or half pointing upwards, half downwards. So this is like the first thing I usually like place when on designing a feather. Second one is curvature. So straight barbs are very rare to occur in nature. Usually the feathers have some kind of like curvature on it. And you can have like curvature on a 2D plane, but also on 3D plane. So our system allows us to edit these curvature profiles in all of those axes and have like a different curvature on the bottom, another one on the top. I can really like draw the shape that we need it to have. So it's a lot of control on that matter. And then once you get the overall shaping kind of resembles that, we can start adding breakups. We have many types of breakups in feathers, and this one is like a bend modifier that will bend the barbs on like random directions. So you can have a variation per barb, you can have on specific sections, you can kind of create this effect here, which is the fluffy bottom that is very common on feathers, and a lot of people love to add them on their feathers. So you can easily like create this effect using this barb modifier. Then we can add some scruffiness. Scruffiness is kind of general deformation of the feather. So imagine you're a bird and you've been through stuff in your life, and then some of your feathers are not as new, they get worn. So you can specify like some specific feathers to have this kind of damage effect, and this helps add like an extra layer of realism when building this bird. The ripple effect, it's something often forgotten about it, but I think it's a very important thing as well. So whenever you get a feather and you bend it around, the area that gets compressed, it kind of like bends in this specific like ripple way. So instead, every time you bend to one side or the other, you can see it happening. I should have brought a feather today. Would be much easier to explain that. But this ripple effect in our system, it can happen automatically. So whatever detects a compression, it automatically creates this for you, or you can add it by design, like if you want to permanently bake on it. Then splits. This is one of my favorites. So we have an extra tool just dedicated for splits. So I think especially on flight feathers that you can see them like very close and nicely on a bird. It's very important to set up your splits in a nice way. So in our system, we can have control to create, for example, this kind of effect that's only on the tips of the barbs. So you can get a little bit of opening. We can have something a bit more aggressive like this one, which is like some larger ones concentrated on specific areas. We can have this one, which is a little bit of like crossover and variation between them. So some of them are like bigger and a bit more damaged, others are smaller, some strands like sticking out of the surface. It can have something very like uniformly broken down, and can also have something like this is like a very damaged feather. And then this is one of the most powerful aspects, I think, on our feather system, which is we can design many feathers in the way we want, like doesn't matter how extreme and different they are, and they are gonna blend between each other. And the thing is, it doesn't matter how many point counts the feather has, how many attributes, what the shape of it, they are gonna blend. So you can have like something like that first tiny feather, there's a bit like chubby one, and then a very skinny one, and then start like blending the shapes to the pointy one, to a more traditional one. So you have a specific tool to paint like the amount of each feather type that you can have, which is like represented by the colors, and then the system will automatically do this blending for you. On a more real example, you can see, for example, on this guy, that you had the tiny feathers around the beak and the eyes, and then it starts becoming the pointy feathers up on the neck, and you can even have like some more messed up, like under the chin, where I usually like move his neck, so this area tends to be a bit more messed up than normal, and they kind of like blend up nicely through the body. So to comb it, like where to place those feathers, we use a Houdini combing system as it is. So you can like comb your guides using the hair generate, hair clump, deformers, everything that Houdini offers naturally. And then by the end, on top of each strand of hairs, a feather proxy is gonna be placed and later will be converted to the actual feather. Here you can see like the painting masks between the different types of feathers as well. And then if you're doing something that is not a white goose, you might want to create some patterns. Here you can see like some very different patterns that a feather can have. And for this, I created a tool to automatically generate those patterns for you. So let me play the video. Yeah. Here you can specify how many stripes you want, the size of it, the size variation of it. You can slide it then up and down to be on specific parts of the feathers only. You can add noises on top of it. You can play around like with frequencies and offsets, and can get a very big range of like variation doing this. It has 2 noise channels, actually. It got like A and B, and they can be like combined together, one on top of the other, to break up the overall shape of it. And this it can pretty much create almost anything you want from that. You can make it a bit more smooth. You can shift the patterns for them to occupy bigger or larger areas on the bottom or on top. You can add some masks on top to like play with the opacity of this pattern. Like it goes both ways, like on U and V. And you can also play with the opening to create more like triangular shapes or more like stripe kind of shapes. And on top of that, you can add some dots. You can choose them to be on top of the stripes, behind the stripes, together with them. You can play with the density, with the radius, the density variation. And you have pretty much all the same noises and masks control that you have on the stripes. So you can like combine both of them together. Yeah, here showing the same masks that we have as well. And another cool thing that we can do is we can combine patterns. So you can throw the first one and then drop another node and just like slide them up and down to create kind of like a double stripes on top of it. And you can like customize the second stripes to have another kind of design. So you can create pretty much anything that comes to your mind with that. You can have an extra one, have 3 layers of like patterning. You can add the dots as well on top and have another kind of effect. Yeah, we use this for a big range of effects. Yeah, here we go. And another thing we can do with this pattern generator is mix them up. So like the same way we can mix different types of feathers, we can also mix different types of patterns. So for example, you can have one pattern that is 3 stripes on the head and then 10 stripes on the body. And then the amount of stripes can blend across the body. And the same thing with all the noises involved on this, with the dots as well. So each field you can like plug on a mask attribute that's going to let you manipulate these across the body. Then splatting. This is kind of like a cool effect, and I think it's a bit essential to create a nice bird. If you watch a bird closely, you see the feathers are always like perfectly like placed upon each other, like as a packet effect. So this helps like the bird insulation and become waterproof. And it's very important to recreate this in 3D. So this tool here helps with that. So instead of like combing every single guide to be perfectly put on top of each other, you can just model this cage, which call it like a sock mesh. And this is going to make all the feathers splat nicely, following the cage shape. So we can like edit the cage like that, and then all the feathers are going to create this silhouette, exactly like that. So this saves a huge amount of time in combing, so you don't have to spend like ages combing perfectly those feathers, because the splat is going to do the work for it. And the thing is, the splat creates a lot of intersections between feathers. So usually after we do this intersection cleanup pass, which is pretty much a vellum simulation that goes placing feather by feather and cleaning that up. Cleans like 99% of intersections. It's not perfect, but it already like does a pretty good damn job on that. And the same thing can be used for folded wings. So you usually like design your wings open, and then the rigger goes down and do like a rough pose of it, close it, and then create a sock mesh and do these intersection passes layer by layer to clean up that shape. So this is how it was before and how it became after this cleanup pass. So it saves like a lot of time and doesn't need to do a lot of like back and forth between animation and grooming, because all I need to do is edit this cage around this and run the cleanup simulation on top. So going back to the goose, here's a summary of the steps. So first we comb it, and then we place the proxies, and then we add some curvature on it, so they're not perfectly flat, but has this kind of like shell effect. We model a sock mesh, we splat it, and then we clean it. And then you get a goose together. And we also did recently a horse, adding wings on it, and we did like a simulation pass to add a little bit of wind breeze through it. So all of the intersections being dealt as well. See if I can play it again. So that one was advertising for Direct Line Valkyrie. So this is War Song. Not sure if you're familiar with Avengers, but now I'm going to start talking about fur. So let's start talking with this cutie. I'm going to talk a little bit how to create wool and grooming. It's kind of like a nice effect on it, and a slightly different type of groom than usual. So if you zoom in up close on that sheep, this is how it looks like. So there's a lot of curling on every single strand of hairs, and you need a lot of segments to build that. And you get like layers of subclumps until it forms the final result of it. I go. So this is our actually combing guides. So you can see there's not much curliness going on the actual guides. That's because they happen on every subclamp level. So that's the first curliness that happen, and then the second one, and that's the final hairs on top of that. And all of this was only using like Houdini nodes. There's no custom Framestore tool on that. The custom tool we have is to actually create parting lines. So you can like draw those lines, and then our system is gonna create those partings for you that you can choose like how much they will open, or you can specify it to open close based on screen stretchiness. So whenever the animal is moving, they're going like to close and down dynamically. Yep, and here's the final result of the wool created. And another angle. So this ship was created for a commercial called Cox Mobile NE, and we had two different ships. This is like an older and more like messed up kind of wool, and then we have Annie, which is the protagonist. She's younger, more pampered, so her curls are a little bit more like designed and more beautiful. And here is the turntable of the ship. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about patternings, but on hairs. So this is a lion cub that we made, and it has a very specific pattern on it. And this is our tool, which is called probability maps. Nowadays, all big studios use some kind of probability tool to create fur textures, and ours is no different from that. So it's pretty simple. You have like different colors, and you paint the probability of having such color. So in this case, I had like one in the middle and then a fall off. So I had like a lot of white in the middle, and then it opens down. Then you can add a second color that's gonna like be blended and combined with the first one. And then you can paint an extra color with different values. And this is like a very simplistic showing of how this works. But you can understand a bit better the behavior with this simple example. Yeah, here we got like all colors mixing up based on what you painted down there. Yep. And here's what we did for the lion. So those are actually like the masks painted on it. I consider very, very simple. You don't have really to spend a huge amount of time painting them, and you can get something that looks nice and natural way, way faster than using normal textures. So here's the final result of the lion. So you can see there's a lot of like patternings happening and fur blending between different sections. And we could do this very quickly. I'm not sure how much you can see on the actual projector, but that maybe looks better on a computer screen. And now I'm going to be talking about groom variants. So we did a show on Netflix called Man vs. Bee with Rowan Atkinson, and we had this bee and Rowan Atkinson as the main protagonists on that. It was, I don't know, I think 200 shots on it, and the bee through the series have been through a lot of stuff. So she was on this natural form of hair. Yeah. And then she was like hit, and then she started becoming a bit messy. She was sucked by a vacuum cleaner and become the buffon. She was in the shower, so she got wet. Oh, we had a lot of different states happening on her. But it doesn't stop there. She was also rolling on the dirt, getting like dusty bunnies all covered on her. She was through the chimney, so she was getting ashes as well. And she was like rolling in peanut butter as well. I've been through a lot of stuff this poor bee along the series. They had to create for her a lot of different states. So we have the main BOTL, like the HDA of her, and per shot you could control exactly what kind of state she would be. So we had the default one, but then she had three main variants, which was wet, messy, and buffa. Fun's like fluffy one. And you could literally like blend shape between them, or you can paint a mask. So for example, you just wanted wet in some specific areas, you could paint that. It could be even like a dynamic map, and it would blend. On top of that, you could also control the overall length of the fur, the density, like reduce the amount of hairs, and control the coloration. So if she was through the chimney, she would be a bit darker. And you also had particles on top of all of these. So you could have water droplets, black powder, dusty bunnies, and peanut butter. So all of this gave a lot of control to the supervisor, like per shot, to dictate exactly how it's going to look like. And he loved it. He's actually standing over there. And the last topic I'm going to be talking today is Flash. But instead of talking about how to make Flash look good, I'm going to talk on how to make it efficient. Because nowadays, CFX became kind of a necessity. So even commercials need to do CFX. So this is kind of like something new, but it's more and more present every day. Before it was just like a film kind of thing. Now it's everywhere. But to cope with commercial times, we had to make it efficient. If it was not efficient, then there's no way you could add it. So the solution I found for that is to create templates. So templates is kind of like a collection of presets all grouped on a big HDA. For example, this is one character that we made recently. This is the ship for Cox Mobile. It had a very quick turnaround, and we were able to put this walk cycle together in 2 weeks. So we could like import all the muscle template, the fat, the skin sliding, and the fur, all of that very quickly, and just adjusted the parameters to get the walk cycle going through. Oh, this is how, when the artist starts working, he presses a button in Houdini, and this window comes up to him. And then he can choose all the dynamic passes he want to add. For example, I want to add some wrinkles, some fat, some muscles, some fur. He just toggles them, choose the asset, and create the CFX setup. This will bring this HDA that has everything connected, all the interface assembled, so you have all the common parameters that are gonna play around. For example, the stiffness, strength, the cache versions. You can have on the input an automatic pre-roll enable, some velocity added up, like if it starts the shot running. You can have some time and space remappers, like for slow motion sections. Or if it's going too fast, to reduce the amount of translation. You can have kissy renders. But it's all like assembled and almost ready to go from the box. The thing that the artist will start doing then is like painting the stiffness map, the overall forces on it, adding extra stuff, but the base is there. So this saves a huge amount of time, and more importantly, it ensures a standardization of the process. This means that we always receive the caches in the same way and publish them in the same way. So the lighters have exactly the same thing in their hands. Doesn't matter which artist worked on the project. We can like shift the artists during the same shot, and they will just open the scene and say, oh yeah, I know where everything is, and work on it. So they don't have to try to understand what's going on every single time. In general, this saves a huge amount of time. And you also assemble everything related to the farm. So you get all your steps here that you can like toggle and send to the farm. You can publish, you can trigger key surrenders, you can do all at once. So they don't have to worry about this part of pipeline anymore. Here's another example where we use the templates. So Niffler, I think you guys are familiar with this dude. He was originally created on film pipeline using Maya tools, but then we had to do this Natural History Museum in our Houdini pipeline, and we need to port that over. So I had to recreate all CFX for him in just around 2 weeks. And this was including the muscle, the fat simulation, the overall like body jiggle, and the feather simulation in this very short turnaround. And that's the result we got on him. And this is the last tool I'm going to talk about. This is something that is still in beta at Framestore. We've been testing on a few projects. But if you work with CFX, you might enjoy it. This is a massive CFX tracker. So it runs inside Houdini, and every single cache that you publish, it detects what animation was used, what asset was used, the groom version, geo version, everything. And then if the animator goes there and make a new anim publish, then it becomes ready for you. Then you know you have to update it. So this is kind of like a way to see everything that you did and quickly spot what needs to be rerun and re-simulated. Right now, we have the spreadsheet part, but the thing we're doing next is to simply select what is out of date and automatically launch our scenes, update caches, and resubmit to the farm. So this is gonna make our performance even higher. And that's it for my talk today. So, as you know, Framestore is always hiring. You can go to our careers website. If you're interested in the IA side, which is Houdini, you can look for the advertising, episodic, and immersive tag on it. At the moment, we are looking for an asset generalist for modeling, texture, and look dev. So if you are one, please come to our booth later on. And yeah, but there are many other opportunities, so feel free to check it out. Some of the episodic projects we are working at the moment is the Netflix adaptation of One Piece and Avatar: The Last Airbender. And we're also working on Black Mirror and on the Crown series. Thank you very much for coming. Let's have any questions?
Well, first of all, thank you a lot for the great presentation. It was really interesting. And my question is, I'm a student. I still don't work in the professional world and all that. And this year, what has really struck me is how much everyone, it seems, is switching to Houdini, putting most of their Houdini pipeline or of their pipeline in Houdini. And I wonder, as a professional in the field, was there an event, something that really caused that shift in everyone, almost everyone, going into Houdini and trying to move everything to this software?
So we are kind of like pioneers on moving to Houdini. We are one of the first like big companies to decide to make that shift some years ago. And I think once we started working with Houdini, all the like nodal possibilities you have it's a no turning back. So I personally love Houdini. That's why I'm here today. So I might be like advocating for on one side a lot, but I think it's the future. Like this kind of nodal environment is very powerful and is definitely worth. It might be a bit difficult at first to learn and it's like less intuitive, but until like your brain switches on and then you understand that, say, whoa, I can do anything I want very quickly. Yeah. I think that's one of the biggest like strengths about Houdini.
That I talk to other people about Houdini because I'm really interested in that piece of software, and yeah, everyone told me exactly the same as you. It's like once you get the thing, it's immediate, no turning back. It's well, so yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
We have a nickname for that. It's called the aha moment. You go, I get it. Any other questions? Yeah.
At first, thank you for showing us all the cool stuff in Houdini. I'm also a student and we struggle with the CFX, and I think it's kind of a basic question, but my question is, did you use for shading the feather normal hair shader system? And which shader or which render engine do you use by Framestore?
In IA, we use Arnold for our renders. Framestore also has an in-house renderer called Freak. We're kind of transitioning to it at the moment. But we use Arnold for our workflow. Sometimes we can use a mantra for some specific effects. I think like for fluids and some smoke effects, mantra is still pretty used. But yeah, our main core is based on Arnold.
Okay.
Hello, great presentation today. I wanted to ask, how do you solve the memory problem with the feathers? For sure you will have like really big numbers, really big, huge amount of hairs and CVs, and that would be like really, really demanding on the memory.
You mean like the number of feathers or the feather simulation?
Well, in the simulation, but especially in render.
Yeah, so we have a lot of optimizations going on to render fur. So we first of all, we don't publish like fur as a single cache. We publish it in like multiple pieces that get assembled during like render time. We don't process the whole graph every single time. We use a rest cache and then it gets deformed through the simulation. So this saves a lot of memory as well. We have some extra like cleanup passes on it, but it's still very heavy. We usually need to have like 128 gigabytes of RAM machines to work, and we render at the farm at 64 gigabytes of RAM. So it's heavy, it takes time, even with a lot of optimizations. But this is because, for example, on the goals we had 120 million points on it, so it's very, very heavy. Simulation-wise, we can do like a full collision pass, but sometimes we do like a cheaper pass, for example, on the body, that it kind of simulated as it was a mass of fat. So we use like tetrahedrons to kind of like simulate it, and uses like some SOP-based post fixes just to fix the big ones. We tend to simulate like S-cloth with full intersection, mostly like big feathers on the wing, things like this. It all depends the project. Like commercials, you won't have time to simulate everything, so you have to hack array around and lose like more like cheaper versions. But episodic, we might go like full crazy on it. So it all depends.
Okay, thanks.
If you're specifically interested in feathers, Kai Stavkinski will be talking about feathers tomorrow afternoon, and he will be talking about optimization and how we'll be dealing with that and going forward. So that should be interesting if you're interested in feathers.
Thanks.
Hi, I have a question about animation. Like when you bring, for example, updates from the animation department to CFX, like what's the process? Like you bring it as a skeletal mesh or like caches, and how it's about going back and forth when you.
You mean for like muscle simulation? And
Yeah, for example, for a muscle simulation, so you certainly animate it somewhere, and you need to bring it to CFX and.
Yeah, usually the way they work with us, the animators have the skeleton geometry and they publish the skeleton. And then all muscle attachment, like triggering of like when it inflates, deflates, and all jiggling and simulation is done on our side. So from like the Maya side and the animation side, they just animate the skeleton. So what we ask them is to avoid the bone-to-bone intersection, because those we cannot really solve, and to not put any unrealistic pose like bones stretching and things like this. But apart from that, all the muscle attachment is made inside Houdini.
Yeah, for sure. But like you take it as a skeletal animation, right? Not as a caches.
Yeah, we got the skeleton geo itself. We don't part like the rig over, like the bones and rigs. It's just the skeleton mesh. Because at the end of the day, we use like some lines to help like guide where it is, and those get attached to the bones itself.
Yeah, gotcha. Thank you so much.
We have time for one more.
Did you get a chance to try to implement grooms or your grooming system into USD yet, or is that a plan that you have?
What, sorry?
Your grooming system into the USD pipeline or USD workflow?
USD, not yet. It's definitely on Framestore radar. They're doing a lot of development on top of that, so we're hoping to get USD up and running at some time soon. But I personally haven't really tested Groom on that yet. But I think Lighting is the first one that they're implementing it, but then gradually it's going to hit Groom and CFX, so pretty soon.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Great presentation.
Thank you.